everything that we see today, the entire spectrum of political, ideological, institutional, everything that's happening around the world tells of signs that we are approaching a threshold. We are approaching a time when things will undergo huge changes, probably even transformative changes. We have been talking now for a number of years regarding a change in the international community, especially after the war in Russia and Ukraine. But since Gaza particularly, and the kind of movements on several levels, including institutional, talking about the building blocks of what we call the international community, whether it be the ICC, the ICJ, the United Nations itself, and how statements are being made in regards with their own comments on what's happening in Gaza. You feel that we are approaching that time when this whole construct, this whole huge tower block is going to start crumbling and falling. In addition to the kind of mobilization that we're seeing around the world that transcends race, religion, faith, creed, ideology and the such, people who are now expressing disbelief in the principles of, let's say, democracy or principles of the Western world. Because effectively they're seeing that practice is defying all that was said in regards with human rights, in regards with freedoms, liberties, rights and the such. We're seeing time after time after time, which maybe allows us to now start thinking of something new, something else, something different. So let's take it from the very top. Where are we now? Why is it that we have arrived here? Why is it that humanity is in such an existential crisis to the extent that people now are looking forward to the next phase? Why is that? What has led us here?
And I can start by saying that this is probably the normal path of things. Following the world order that has been established since World War II, it reached its climax, and the purpose of its existence actually are starting to expire. So it is in my view, it's kind of self-destructing. And we are seeing things that are totally strange. And it's not like just, for example, the UN is not efficient, or you cannot enforce its decisions or things. Now we are seeing a member state of the UN seeking to classify one of the UN organizations as a terrorist organization, the UNRWA. Okay? How come? Yani this is an organization that was established right after the Nakba, after 1948. And it had a specific purpose, and it has been working in an acceptable way for all these years. And all of a sudden, it is being termed as a terrorist organization. And nobody is saying anything about that. And nobody is condemning the member state that is seeking to do this. The same kind of attitude is being practiced against the International Court of Justice or the Criminal Court. So it is kind of a conviction that this whole scheme is expiring to pave the way for another scheme.
So what, just on this particular point, so when you say, when you started by saying this is the normal way of things, is it because essentially there is a lifespan even for these organizations? Or is it because there is somewhere something that is either malfunctioning or some sort of distortion of how things are working, so that it brought, or it is about to bring, the end of this life cycle? Which one is it?
Both, actually. Yani actually, civilizations have always been like this. You see the rise of a civilization, the peak, and then a decline. Probably the cycles took longer times than they are taking right now. Now everything is fast, is very fast. And the time between, from the World War II until now is few decades. It's not just a century. So it's happening quicker, particularly during the last probably 20 years. But this is the way things are happening. This is what we call sunan يعني كونية, universal sunan, universal modes of things. So this is what happens normally. But in order for this to happen, there are things that we see that wrong practices that that trigger the malfunctions and expedite the process of the collapse. Okay, so it's a kind of mix of both. But this is what I mean by the normal thing. Now, the world order that emerged out of the World War II, it turned out that it is a total failure. Nothing is working. I'm not saying this as kind of wishful thinking, or this is what I would like to see, or no. This is reality. The leader of the world order, the United States. If you look at the wars, for example, that the U.S. got into during the last decades, please name to me a single war that the United States can claim that it got out of it with victory. None. And this is not recent. From Vietnam, going through Afghanistan, going through Iraq, Somalia, even what's happening now in the Ukraine. Not a single conflict that the leader of the world order became victorious. And you cannot assume that this is intentional. This is they have all the facilities, they have all the finance, they have all of the politics, all of the power, all of the technology and everything, and yet they are losing.
Is it the fact that let's say international order, Western civilization, I'm not entirely sure how we're going to label it, but the decline of this, is it necessarily bad news?
I guess that looking into the system day by day, I realized that the system has really been built pro the few, not the mass. And that by the time the mass are not happy. And the few keeps on trying to either control the mass, guide the mass, give a nice hopeful narrative, or a narrative of fear to the mass, and all of them are not working now. So the hope that had been created post the World War II about renaissance, about building up, about economy, rule of law, checks and balances, all of this has come to a kind of an end, because people can see the corruption, people can see the failure of the economic system, people can see that very few have more than 60% of the worldwide, power of economy and so on. And even the fear that they have instilled of the people, the new generation, time by time, as Amr has said during the, this is my first time to tell you, not Dr. Watson, during the past 20 years, is resisting this kind of fear. So for those who seeks stability, for those who seeks status quo, for those who still believe that there is a big hope from restructuring from within, yes, the collapse of the current system might bring bad news. But for those who have experienced it many times before and came to a conclusion that there is no hope in the current system about real change, about real democracy, about real rule of law, then they might say that this, let's say, collapse, deterioration will create gaps, will create areas of maneuvering where new ideas, new paradigms, new projects can emanate and people can find some hope in those new projects.
I mean, it's interesting because, just to reassure the listeners and the viewers that we're not here bearing doom. We're not we're not encouraging or cheering doomsday scenario. But the fact is that, my opening is based on events that are really happening. They're not theoretical. We're talking about a time now when humanity can claim that it is at its most advanced on many levels, economically, technologically, medically, all these things. But despite these incredible, in terms of communication and the like, things are happening today that only a few years ago would never have. Only today, before I came in, someone was showing me a clip that they made on their mobile phone, a 2-minute clip, which is entirely AI. You see it, there's a person, that person is saying something, they're moving, and yet they made this on their mobile phone. It took them 5 minutes. And they made this 2-minute clip. It's mind-boggling, and the person is not real, the voice is not real, and the such. So only a few years ago, probably even a few months ago, we wouldn't have imagined even what is happening today. Yet, at the same time, the status of humanity is at its most miserable. In terms of the level and scale and brutality of the conflicts and bloody, violent conflicts, wars, bloodshed, death, crimes. I can tell you from my experience in the UK, knife crimes, you have something like almost 80 knife crimes every single day. Police, this is almost a running joke. When your car gets stolen, don't bother telling the police, because the police will say, it's covered by insurance, just go to the insurance company, they'll cover it. Why are you bothering us? They've literally surrendered the streets of London and the big cities to the criminals. And that's worldwide. We're talking about a greater level of disease, a greater level of famines, a greater level of poverty and deprivation, a greater level of mental illness, a greater level of suicides, skyrocketing rates of suicide. So we're talking about a sense of misery that humanity has reached at. Despite those great advancements and those great achievements on several scales. And particularly Gaza. For some reason, it opened people's eyes to something. All of a sudden, Americans, born and bred, studying in the elite universities, that charge tens of thousands, probably $100,000 every single year, are being treated in ways by their own troops, by their own policemen and women, in ways that they never imagined they would ever be treated. All of a sudden, the facade of human rights, the facade of freedom of speech, of freedom of expression, came crumbling down, and people are now in an existential crisis, as is, who are we? What are the values that govern us? What is our identity? Who are we for?
You see, before getting into Gaza, Gaza is very important in the context now that we're talking about. But you touched upon something that is, you refer to the advanced technologies that are there, and you said that in spite of this, people live in misery and so on. As a matter of fact, some people see that these developments are actually some of the causes of this misery. I was going through a report by an investigative reporter, Whitney Webb, she's very famous in the US, and she is investigating what she calls the a surveillance state, how they follow people, and she gave the history of this, starting from back to the Reagan administration, when they were starting to do that as part of a bigger scheme. But they failed over the years. They couldn't do it. Until now, they reached a formula where they actually commissioned this to private sector. And they made use, this is the important thing, the new technologies facilitated the imposition of this stuff through AI, facial recognition, through Facebook, the information that you give willingly on Facebook, on your Facebook account, and how this got into an empire that is actually targeting surveillance of people and even identifying a database of people, millions of people, who could be taken, stormed out in case of something major that is happening. And how the issue of epidemics and this kind of thing are being used to expedite the acquisition of this database and all that. It's not conspiracy theory. It is so real with big names and everything, and I encourage people to look for that report and read it. But what I'm saying is that people are now starting to become aware of what is what is happening to them, and it's just all the democracy and the welfare state and all that actually resulted in the creation of a very small number of elite who are controlling everything. In the US, they are talking about 800-900 people who are actually controlling everything. In business, media, politics, finance, of course, and they are running the country. She was talking in the context of selecting J.D. Vance as vice president with Trump. So anyway, people now are starting to think about these things and realize that they have been actually fooled by their state. What made this actually even more clear, or one of the reasons, is Gaza. When you refer to Gaza, Gaza was a big eye-opener to a lot of people. They couldn't believe what they are seeing. Everything is live, and people are dying, people are massacred, and nobody is doing anything to stop this. And as a matter of fact, it's not just that. The party that is committing all these crimes is getting full support from the international community. So there must be something wrong with this international community that is permitting all this to happen. So people start questioning. And because it's taking so long, maybe the plan was that this would take few days and that's it, but it's taking so long that it's an ongoing tragedy that never stops. Full of contradictions. For example, a couple of days ago actually, there was an unfortunate event that some children got killed by a rocket that is claimed to be coming from Lebanon. Lebanon is denying this.
Shams.
So anyway, in Magdal Shams, exactly, and unfortunately, children were killed in that incident. How many children were killed before in Gaza without over 100 of the reaction that took place for this incident? All are innocent lives, and
this selective humanity,
Exactly.
the fact that we care for some but not for others,
Yes.
the fact that we give democracy to some but
So this is an eye-opener. This is what I'm saying.
and this is exactly what's leading people to ask questions.
Questions, exactly.
Yeah, and the state, I guess, is a super strong body. If you think about the modern state, everything is in the hand of the state. Medics, economy, in our region, then macro and micro, both of them, licenses, mining, everything, every single thing is in the hand, in a way or another, of the state. And I would think about, yes, the deterioration is happening, but when you have a state that is so strong like that, you need to ask yourself, is it going to dismantle, and what's next? Because people are tired, all of the people. We can see that.
Yeah.
All the things that you have mentioned are true. But do we in our region as Arab Spring 2010, 2011, and then all the rising demonstrations enlightened by what happened in Gaza, we know exactly what we are against. But right now, I guess
No, hang on. What are we against?
What we are against.
Yeah, what are we against?
And I guess that in brief, we are against injustice. In all meaning of injustice. We are against the injustice of having very few oligarchy, very few elites handling everything, giving the leftovers for the people, giving the leftovers for our region, whether it's Africa, it's Middle East, controlling everything, even in the United Nations, ICG, etc. You can see it's not even working from a cosmetics standpoint that used to happen. It's not working. And I guess that if we want one thing that gather all of us, those who are angry, those who are disappointed, I guess it's injustice.
And that covers
the
vast majority of the world population.
of the people. Exactly.
Including the developed states.
When you look into our region, I mean, Africa, which people are always not regarding as almost 1.6, 1.7 billion people living in Africa. You know, what's the percent of poverty and femininity in Africa?
Yeah.
Close to 50%. 840 million people are living under $1.50 per day. So can you imagine?
Yeah.
Taking it from...
And this is one of the wealthiest continents in the entire world.
Yes.
Absolutely. When it comes to resources, I mean, look into the East and the West, from things that they discovered recently in Somalia for a very big shore of gas and petroleum, to Kenya, where they discovered another shore full of petrol, to Angola, the second largest reserve, for example, to Nigeria, to South Africa, of the mining there for gold and diamond, etc. I mean, resources.
That's not even to mention the
metals.
swathes of agriculture.
And agricultural. You're talking about Sudan, for example, that can feed half the world, for example. So you're talking about a huge resources, and people are not given the chance. And I guess this is very important, that whenever you find a group of people coming under revolution, under a change, wave of change, they need real justice, they are being fought. And they are bringing down, as if this regime, this system that has been there for the past 100 years, are intentionally making sure that there is no justice outside our home. It's very debatable inside their home whether there is justice or not as well.
Yeah.
But you can say that there was, a buffer of democracy, a buffer of welfare states, although this is very debatable to me. But for outside, everyone should be kept, pressured. And if there is justice, if there is a good availing for opportunities among people, then this will create threat for us. And I guess it's very important, Anas, that we understand that the mentality of the West, who have been leading, from a civilization point of view, as I believe, is built on a very different mentality from us as, let's say, Muslims, or it's built on an idea of scarcity. That resources are few, that people are a lot, and opportunities are not, available for everyone. So we need to seize that. We need to seize the land, we need to seize the opportunities, we need to seize the technology. You cannot have the technology, whether it's in medicals, even if it's in medicals. You cannot have it. Coronavirus is killing me. No, you cannot. Because I always see everyone as a competitor, and I have to lead. And I understand what Amr said about the state didn't win in all the the wars and battles they have been in. But part of me is saying that this is intended as well. Who said that they wanted to win? Maybe they won from their own point of view by creating more and more disorders in those regions. More and more disorders means for them that they will avail.
Chaos.
I cannot control you fully right now. Okay, I already put, I mean, when you see Sykes Biko, etc., they have already planted the seeds of chaos and the seeds of dismantling and disordering, etc. So what you said is we are going into that. Day by day, we are approaching that. But if we understand that the dismantling of the pre-World War II led to the World War II with a minimum recorded number of deaths, 80 million, only inside Europe. So you can imagine if the big boys inside the room did not fix their problems. And I remember Putin in 2016, and he was in the United Nations, and he said, the world oil was just cracking down. And everyone was like, playing friends during that time. Everyone was. He said, no, it will bring trouble. And this trouble probably will be beyond our control. So every one of the big boys right now cannot settle it peacefully. The question, they can sort themselves out. The question is about us. I mean, the undermined, the less privileged, the mass. The mass has got now the question, which in a way, us being in exile for the past 11 years right now, and seeing what happened in Gaza is another eye-opener. Seeing what happened in Iraq was an eye-opener that many people didn't want to see. They wanted to see as, like a one-time off things that was not meant. But when you gather Iraq, you put Syria, you put Egypt, you put Afghanistan, you put Libya, you put Yemen, Syria. Syria. I mean, okay, guys. In order for you to prevail for another 100 years, you want to bring everything down, and you don't care.
Big events, huge events, such as wars, outbreak of mass violence that affects millions and the such, sometimes is brought about by smaller events.
Yes.
One of the events that continues to come back to me, and I don't know whether you agree, but for instance, the George Floyd incidents in 2021, that was a big thing. I mean, in the whole spectrum of things, it might have been minute. I mean, ultimately, one person was killed. But the kind of shockwave that sent, not only across America, but throughout the world, as to something which was quite important, and that is the kind of values, the value system that the West lives by and behaves with its own citizens. That was an eye-opener to many who were still, by then at that point, deceived by that kind of facade, that kind of quite impressive face of Western civilization.
Yes. But this is a very important point. But let me remind you of something that you were personally involved in back in 2003. The massive demonstrations against the invasion of Iraq. Okay, millions of people across the West have been protesting that, and it was a big eye-opener, for. So we're having George Floyd, we're having Gaza, we're having similar things. So we are seeing waves, reactions to what people realize, how much they have been fooled, and they have been living in a world that is it's not just unjust, it's designed to prosper and continue based on injustice. And this takes us to even before World War II. And what we are seeing at what we call the New World Order is actually the peak of the civilization that emerged from the middle centuries, from after the Westphalia
Yes.
Agreement and the formation of the nation states.
Correct.
And Yehia brought a very important point about the strength of
Yeah.
of the nation state. That was actually a total regime that was designed based on the sovereignty of nation states and the monopoly of power within the states. Nobody else other than the state can practice force and then all the colonizations and all that. So over hundreds of years, this is one regime, one system, and what we are seeing now is the peak, and what I believe is the decline of that regime, and it is actually based on a set of values that are formed around secularism, very very clearly. We are now starting. When they started that regime, they started to think very far from the concept of there is God and controlling the universe and all that into the man as the owner of the universe,
The supreme being,
and all that, and everything afterwards have been going on, based on that. So what we are seeing now is the climax of this. What we are seeing how the nation states are. It's a very good point about winning the wars, actually, that Yehia wrote. Yes, it is. If they actually wanted to cause chaos, so they won, or they succeeded. Let's say
that's what's happening.
Okay, so and when you hear that some people who were in charge talk about constructive chaos and all that, so there is an origin. This is not just, again, this is not conspiracy theory. This is, people talk about it, and when you examine the role of what they call the military-industrial complex in the U.S. and how they are creating wars and making sure that they continue through the people who used to be CEOs in these companies and then go to become Secretary of Defense and then go back, So they make sure that wars continue and destruction continues and hegemony continues. But actually, people are now realizing that this is the end of this. And I would like to give a good example that is actually very that clarifies my viewpoint. Of course, everybody knows Francis Fukuyama, and he's most famous
End of history.
Back in the end of the last century, in the 90s. After the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, I remember The Economist invited many scholars to write about that, and one of them was Fukuyama.
Yeah.
And he wrote a very good, deep article about, and he called it the end of hegemony.
Right.
Okay. So this is Fukuyama,
Yeah.
who talked about the end of history. Now he's talking about, and he actually said that the U.S. is not going to, as an empire, is not going to end based on external forces defeating the U.S. on the military ground. No, it's going to collapse from within. And due to the how things are developing.
Yeah, to the extent that some commentators thought that this was a repudiation of his original end of history.
Yes.
Essay. It was sort of an apology, a backtracking.
It's not just an apology; it's total contradiction. That was very courageous. I really admired what he. By the way, Henry Kissinger himself wrote something about that as well. Yeah. So, what we are saying is so clear that even those who theorized the end of history, they are realizing that we are approaching the end.
Yeah.
Okay, because what we call in Arabic طغيان, I don't know the word in English, to express that. When it's so much, too much. Yeah. So this is what we are seeing now, and people are starting to wake up. However, due to the strength of the state, and we used to talk about the state when we describe our regimes in our areas, but we realize now that the United States is even, it's probably the most, or the strongest state and the most dictator state when you read the Webb's report, the most suppressive that practice surveillance, and they try to propose China as the leader of this. Yeah. No, actually the US is by far.
This is very interesting, and I'd like to point to something that is striking, and maybe we've had this discussion on the side myself and you over the years. But and just as a disclaimer, I'm by no means proposing that Corona was either a scam or
Conspiracy.
not at all. But what I observe and continuously think about was that the way in which the world readily accepted to be locked down, how immediately most people around the world, and educated people, wealthy people, well-off people, heads of industry, heads of companies, accepted to be isolated, to be kept in their own rooms, not to communicate with even their loved ones, not to go out, not to do, for so long, almost 2 years, at the behest of the government say-so.
Yes.
Is an incredible experiment that could be manipulated.
But it's the same. I mean, look to the reading lists of most of the people. It's the reading lists that they have been given by their schools. Yeah? The places that you can travel is the places that have been approved by your state, possibly, that you have to travel to or you can travel to. So you have been given freedom, but in a very concentrated area.
Yeah.
And it depends how big your room is. But all of them were locked rooms.
So ultimately speaking, despite the fact that humanity is, as we are told, in its best state of freedom and its most state of freedom, we are at our most suppressed.
Yes.
But this is again a disclaimer from the states. If you from Iraq or from Afghanistan or from Syria, and you cannot travel anywhere that you want to do in the world because of your passport being undermined, there is no freedom. If you are being told that because you are not medically covered, why you did nothing, you have just been born as a United States citizen or Brazilian citizen or an Egyptian or Iraqi citizen, anyway, you are not free. And I guess, again, in when we studied novels, and there is a moment of truth, a moment of realization. And the very quick and very, super train or super speedy instance that happens now in the world, we come to realization after the other. Yeah. And when you said that when we were locked down, I remember in Italy, and the numbers in Italy in the beginning of the coronavirus was huge. And then they locked people, and we all saw people being, beaten by the police in Italy.
Absolutely.
When they go down their own apartments.
Yeah.
Again, let me tell you this joke. A few days ago, we saw Biden, saying, I'm not going to go into the presidential election again. I give the torch for the new generation, etc., etc. How the media wanted to frame him after that? Being patriotic. Being, wow. He is avoiding his own personal, whatever, wishes, interests, etc.
After he was an old man with dementia.
After he was a man with dementia. And I wrote then that this is my own belief. No one knows what will happen for sure, but I believe that Biden brought Trump back to the presidency. And again, the camouflage, the Hollywood style. We are living in a very, free world. Free trade. What's free trade? We don't have a free trade. Who said that we have a free trade? Can I import or can I export anything? Again, back to where we are from. We are from Africa. And can you import anything that you want from China? The answer is no. Can you export everything that you have from your resources for wherever and whoever you want? No. Whether this is by treaties, whether this is by common sense, whether by the military base that they have in the sea, you can't. So we don't have free trade agreements. Even this globalization, we don't have globalization, we have westernization. You are being mandated to accept certain things. Who are the biggest 5-6 countries in the world for gas and petroleum and so on? And I was with South African friend, and he was telling me how the states brought down back 20, 25 years ago, the whole industry of the defense manufacturing in South Africa, which at that time was very prominent and was very, they had the hopes that it will grow as much as the Turkish one now. This is the reality. So it's a wake up for everyone, whether people want to live under that system.
But you said earlier, you said moment of truth.
Yeah.
Have we arrived there?
We are coming, more and more people. I mean, you can't say that everyone, but if it's not in the elite and it started to hit part of the mass, if it started to hit the new generation, if this new generation decided in a way to pay a price to alter, change the system, whether peacefully, non-peacefully, but they can bear the cost of change, then we are coming into new levels of realizations. You can't say that 100% of the people will have this, because they fought that by increasing poverty, increasing illness, increasing alienation of the people and marginalization. They didn't want you to be fit to realize. But as much as incidents happen, especially Gaza, you in UK, how many people now talk freely against Israel, against Zionism, against the brutality of what is happening, against that those are human beings as much as those people. You have been doing that. And the good thing is that it happened in Ukraine 2 years before, and everyone thought that, oh la la, the West is really nice. They are pro-humanity, people, kids, and so on and so on.
We opened our doors to
and
all
we opened our
immigrants.
doors for everyone.
Yes.
And then you saw the reality. No.
Send them to Rwanda.
You are not the same. You are not the same. You are not like them. Why? Because we built this system for us. And if you thought for a minute that you realizing that you have the tools of changing the system, no, wake up. We did the same. I mean, 2011, we did elections. Yeah. In Egypt and everywhere. I mean, Tunisia, Egypt, everywhere. But Egypt is a good example. And people went to the ballot boxes and then they say, as if they are telling you, you thought that these ballot boxes were for you? Yeah, you can be fooled with, it was not, like an entire democracy, not democracy for all. You need to understand that democracy is not only about ballot boxes, all these nice things. But reality is, the system was not built for you, so wake up. Either you accept to be a second citizen, third citizen, someone with, we give you some leftovers to enjoy. But if you understand that this is your country, these are your resources, that you want to take part of that. And I guess Gaza realized, even for the Western, even white citizen, that he is living the same life as us in the Middle East, but who was given a little bit of a spacious room. Little bit. Because look, how many of the citizens of United States have got more than $3,000 in their bank? Yeah. Which is,
less than half.
Which is not a big amount at all. No. Right or wrong? If they stopped working for 1 or 2 consecutive months, they are,
No, they're struggling. They're starving.
They will be struggling,
Absolutely.
right? So where is this the strongest economy in the world? Where more than half or 60% of the people doesn't even have $1,500, $1,700 in their bank account. So they started to realize, actually, we are like them. I'm being beaten. And by time he understands that he's not fighting for Gaza, in a way, unconsciously, he will start to realize that he's fighting for himself.
For himself and his own dignity.
His own freedom.
Rights.
And Gaza is only an exemplification of that misery, that he's living part of it.
Yeah. And I'm reminded by, what you just said regarding the ballot box and democracies in countries such as Egypt.
Yes.
In 2011. Now there's not even a ballot box. The ballot box has been confiscated somehow. But I'm reminded by what took place a few weeks ago when the ICC issued the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and some generals. And what the leader of the majority in Congress said. He said, we need to put the ICC in its place.
Yes.
And when Karim Khan, if you recall, a couple of months ago, when in his press conference, when he said, some people approached me and said that we didn't build these institutions to go after us.
Yeah.
We built it for the Africans and Asians. We didn't build it for us.
It's exactly like, I'll tell you something. Remember, the late General Assad in Egypt, a member of the military council, after the coup, he told me, in a phone conversation, you keep saying that we made a coup against President Morsi. Actually, it's the other way around. It's President Morsi who made a coup against the system. It's Dr. Morsi who made the coup. It's not. There is a system that is well established. And how dare somebody like Morsi or his people, his party, or the people in general, how dare they to penetrate this and believe that they are going to, have something different. So it is them, it's Morsi who made the coup. It's exactly, the same thing as, that Karim Khan was told, But before we leave the issue of the pandemic, this is a very important and very telling, actually, because there are two major issues that clarified, what resulted out of the pandemic. And again, I'm not talking about conspiracy theories that people are injected with something that Bill Gates, developed to spy on them or things like that. A tracker or there. And I believe that these conspiracy theories are being proposed by the people who would like to spread this ridiculous stuff so that you don't believe that there is really a conspiracy. If two things that were proven. First of all, there was a full-scale, a prototype model of controlling people. Go get in, get out, sleep, wake up, eat this, don't eat this. I remember when we used in the lockdown, we used to order things from the, get delivery from the supermarket, and the guy came as if he is like getting into an
astronaut.
Astronaut, and we get the stuff and we use, purifiers and stuff like that in order, before we even touch it. It was, and we were abiding
absolutely
100% with the rules. Yeah, if you tell me, 1,000 times to do this, but willingly. So it was a really a good experiment of how to control billions of people, at a certain time. So this is one thing, and everybody saw it. The second thing is that, and this is also part of the Whitney Webb's report, is the use of the database that resulted from tracking the COVID incidents and the vaccines and all that into the database that is being utilized for the surveillance of people. Okay, that was an integral part. That they used the Facebook data, and they also integrated the data coming from the Department of Health. Okay, so this is something that is proven. It is there. Yeah, it is not speculation or. So you cannot. At least if you don't assume that this is intentional, at least that was an opportunity for the controlling powers in order to, we have a chance now to practice what we should do, we should be doing. So all this is a sign that things reached, again, if you go back to our original theme, the peak and the climax of the regime that was established back in the maybe 17th century or even before. And this is ending, and people now are, you ask if they are, yes, they are waking up. I see now a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels and Twitter accounts that the social media, of course, played a very important role in this awakening. People now have a resource in order to get information other than
the mainstream.
The mainstream.
The BBC.
They for example, people now are talking about how the mainstream channels are covered stuff like Biden versus Trump or Gaza or things like that, and they have proven that there is an intentional scheme of hiding realities from people, leading people to believe or see only one angle. Now they are talking about what happened to Biden as a coup.
It is a
And
light
actually,
coup.
a friend of mine sent me something about that. And I told her that this is how coups take place in the U.S.
I just said the same like 2 days ago.
This is how
White
coups
coup.
take place in the
It's
U.S.
white coup.
Starting from accepting to push Biden into this debate with Trump.
The very early
Very
debate.
early debate, 2 months before normally it is done.
Yeah.
And everybody knew what kind of performance Biden would be giving. Until, of course, the debate was miserable. And then pressure started on Biden in order to quit.
Until the phone call of Obama.
And even before that, now there have been information that even Kamala Harris threatened Biden to use the 25th Amendment, which allows the vice president to assume power in certain incidents. And when she accepted that, Obama called Biden and told him that we now have the green light from Kamala Harris to apply the 25th Amendment. So whether this is right or not, but this is spreading right now. And there are clear indications of this happening. People are even questioning the letter that was signed by Biden in order to say that he was quitting, because 1 hour before that he was saying that I'm going to,
He's still there.
I'm staying and I'm going to win and all that. So you kind of, and even they are talking about now, they are bringing Harris, who was not actually elected. She was actually the least contender during the primaries of the Democratic Party. They didn't even give it a small chance for the base of the Democratic Party to decide and select a successor for Biden, which is, but now Kamala Harris is in the front.
Is the savior.
And she's the top. And now polls are being published every day that she's by far ahead of Trump. Come on, what happened? They were making a lot of fun of her. I with all due respect, but how you can see the switch happening without concluding that there is some sort of control that is being established.
And this is something that I notice from interacting with the youth of today, and I say the youth up until, let's say, the age of 40, including my own children, their peers, that they're paying attention to this. They are noticing that this is happening. I have to say that when I was in my 20s, these things I wouldn't pay attention to. If the news told me, I would listen, I would know. If the news didn't tell me, then I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be the wiser.
It's not written in the papers. So.
But now people have dozens of other channels to gain information, to gain images, to gain... It's quite remarkable. So the question is, has the system been caught out by its own devices, by its own inventions, this social media, this technological communication advancement? Is this now the sort of the tools through which the system will be brought down and brought to an end?
No one knows. I don't know. What I know is, as much as there is a benefit of making the mass know, there is a risk of getting the mass adapted to the situation that they accept. So, yes, we are against the system. There is an exposure. People know. And you remember when 4 years ago they started, the news about us being tapped in the phones, all these things, cookies. People were frightened, and everyone knows that he's being heard out. Absolutely. He talks about one thing, one product, one trip. He finds it after a few minutes in his Facebook, on his Instagram, whatever. So he knows, and people accept it. Yeah. People are not against that right now.
But it's like the COVID experience.
So it's like giving people electrical shock. So you are being given an electrical shock. Did you wake up? If you did not wake up because of the electrical shock, then this huge, good technological advancement didn't make it so good for us to know. And I guess we need to realize there is realization, and then there is movement.
A reaction to the realization.
So people knew. the mass started to know. More and more people started to know. The question is, how can they mobilize themselves? While we have, again, the strong states trying to dismantle any groups.
Yeah.
And part of it was the COVID. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going back. You can't have 2-3 people sitting together. So any group as small as 2-3 people are not acceptable to gather. In our countries right now, you can't have a meeting, for example, a political meeting, I don't know, 3-7 people, something very idiotic like this, yeah, that they can gather together, or they can be caught by the police, etc. So, yeah, it's bringing down, and as I once heard it, I guess, the old is dying and the new is not yet born. So yes, we all know the old is dying. If it's not dead yet, فلما قضينا عليه الموت. Yeah. So if it's not dead yet, it's dying, and it's dying quickly. Yeah. Whether this quickly can be 10 years, 5 years, we don't know. But it's coming, and we cannot say that it's pulling itself back and it's becoming more strength. Its narrative, it's dead. Its application, it's dead. Their own misbehaviors and misconducts is bringing it to a fast death. But the question that we need to get engaged with, what is the new? What's the new structure, the new ideology, the new formations, the new groups, people, all these things, where people can pour their energy into and believe in it. Especially that all the projects, at least in the last century, have failed to realize any of people's dreams.